Hello everyone, welcome back, and what a terrible way for Barcelona to start their Champions League run with a 2-1 loss to AS Monaco. And of course, from the 10th minute, you knew that was going to be a very difficult game. And of course, the reason that Barcelona lost this game is because of a terrible individual mistake from Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. And overall, that's one of the worst performances that I've seen from an individual in a big Champions League game in a very long time. And I don't want to just bash one player individually, but that was so horrible. I can't understand that pass that he tried to make, which ultimately cost Barcelona the game because Eric Garcia, he did get sent off. I mean, maybe he shouldn't have went in for that tackle, but it's just a reaction because he's trying to prevent the guy from going in one-on-one right at the goalkeeper. Ter Stegen, such an awful decision to make that pass. Not the only terrible pass he made this game, just the only one that Monaco capitalized against. And then also, the saves that he could have made. He also could have prevented both of those goals, and it's the Ter Stegen special. Again, I don't want to bash one player. I'm being reactionary because I'm just really frustrated given how excited we were to watch that game. And from the 10th minute, you completely ruined Barcelona's game plan because you want to try and play pretty like that. That's so terrible. It's so terrible. I know your game plan is to build out from the back, but do not make an awful decision like that when you have two players open on the sides. Just make the simple pass. And Barcelona, literally, he cost them the game today. And in both goals, he could have easily prevented. The first one, a near post shot going in at Ter Stegen in a Champions League game. Step one, the opposing player shoots it. Step two, Ter Stegen. No, actually, sorry, this is step two. This is Ter Stegen. That's Ter Stegen freezing, right? I'm Ter Stegen. Step three, he turns and looks at the ball in the back of the net. It's every single time it's a near post shot. It's already a goal against Barcelona, and it's so frustrating. And then that second goal. I thought the replay maybe could have done Ter Stegen a little bit better, but my eyes did not deceive me. That was directly at Ter Stegen, and he was trying to predict where the guy was going to shoot, so I understand him diving early, but if the ball is directly at you, please do everything you can to not let it in. And I'm just so frustrated because I know a lot of Barca fans, they defend this guy and they said that he had that really good season in La Liga. I've always said that in a big Champions League game, and I will not change my mind until he makes me change my mind, in a big Champions League game, you cannot trust Ter Stegen, and that was absolutely true today. What a catastrophic way to start your Champions League run. And Ter Stegen, you don't want to blame it all on one person, and I'm sure he feels bad about it, but that's such a terrible mistake, a mistake that you cannot make if you want to go far in the Champions League. And I mean, maybe the positive is, hopefully that's the only time that happens, and we got the mistake out early, but that is so terrible. And it just reminds me of the Ronald Araujo red card against PSG. You get sent off early in the game, you're down 10 men versus 11, and it's going to be very difficult. And also, it's so frustrating watching every other player on Barcelona go 110% for the next 80 minutes just to try and keep up and basically cover for you because you made a terrible mistake. And, I mean, Casado, Pedri, every single player, they put so much heart into this game. But Ter Stegen, he ultimately cost Barcelona the game from the 10th minute. And for me, that is just so frustrating. And like I said, I'm reactionary, but that is such a terrible mistake. And I just wanted to get that rant over with because you cannot lose your team the game within 10 minutes. Let them score before getting sent off. And I think Eric Garcia, maybe some people have some blame to him. It's on Ter Stegen for me because it's such a terrible pass. And when you have two people wide open, there's really no benefit in going there anyways. It's such a terrible decision. And by the way, this is the first Champions League game that Barcelona are back in since Ron Araujo made a terrible mistake within the first 15 minutes of the game to get sent off. So your first Champions League game back, and you do the same exact thing. What are you doing? Have you not learned from that? That's the reason Barcelona lost in the Champions League last year, and you make the same mistake 10 minutes later. Like 10 minutes after your Champions League begins, you do the same exact thing. But outside of Ter Stegen's mistake, I think every other player on the field deserves a lot of praise. Lamine Yamal, what a special player. I mean, that was something out of nothing, and that's exactly what Lamine Yamal could do. Casado, he played a decent ball over the top, but it wasn't going to get to Yamal, but he did exactly what Haaland did. It was basically a number 9 action there that he basically shrugged off his defender, let the ball go through, took his man on. What a finish into the near post. That was just incredible from Lamine Yamal, and he drew Barcelona level. And it just wasn't enough because then Ter Stegen got a shot directly at him, and he let it go in. That's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And I think every other player on the field, though, they had to go 110% from minute 10, and that can add a lot of injuries as well because your intensity is already very high. But to cover for one man less on the field for that length of time, that's so difficult on the players. Marc Casado and Pedri, I think they were both brilliant. Casado, I think he had such a solid performance in this game, and Pau Cubarsí, hats off to him. Koundé and Balde and Inigo Martinez, they were also solid, making blocks and defending well. But Kubarsi, he tried his absolute hardest to cover for Ter Stegen, and it wasn't enough because you let your team play with a man down for 80 minutes. And I don't want people to go on social media and bash Ter Stegen, go underneath his Instagram post and comment a bunch of slander. I don't think that really helps the situation. I'm sure he feels bad. And I just like talking about this because I know Ter Stegen is not going to see this, but that is so frustrating. That is honestly the most frustrating thing I've seen, since the Araujo red card, because you just hurt your team. And the momentum they had going into this game, Hansi Flick, he was trying something different. He was playing Eric Garcia there. And, of course, maybe if he would have started Ferran, things would have went differently, but we don't know. We don't know how well the Eric Garcia situation would have worked because we did not get to see it. And Ter Stegen, as I've said, I just believe in the Champions League at this top level, you cannot continue to make mistakes like that. And I also think, Rafinha, no offense to him, he had a ton of chances. I thought he was going to play a little bit better today. He had a ton of chances to score a goal, just couldn't capitalize on those. So, and Lewandowski just really non-existent in this game, but it's a man down. It was kind of in that second leg against PSG, that similar performance where he was just trying to defend and try and get a few touches here and there. It was so frustrating to watch. And maybe I'm just reactionary and thinking about this Ter Stegen thing, but I just believe if you want to win the big trophies in Europe, you have to completely trust your goalkeeper. And I've never felt like that. Really, since I've started watching Barcelona, I've never felt like Ter Stegen is safe in the Champions League. So it's frustrating. It's just, and Marmash-Davili, the Valencian goalkeeper, he was signed for around $30 million from Liverpool. I felt like there were some good options on the market, and I just didn't think Barcelona were going to sign him. It just doesn't seem like he's ever going to be replaced. It might be 2035, and I'm still seeing Ter Stegen get beat at the near post in a Champions League game. What are we doing? I don't know. Maybe I'm reactionary, but that's just so frustrating, and I think, that's ultimately the reason why Barcelona lost this game and why they've gotten off to a terrible start in the Champions League when you really wanted to go in there and get a win. And if it was 11v11 for 90 minutes, Barcelona would have won that game. I was so confident in the way the team played because it was even close with a man down and with Ter Stegen letting in 2 savable goals. So hats off to almost every other player on the field. To be honest, I think they put in such good performances. They had to play at 110% effort level for 80 minutes. So hats off to them. But ultimately, that decision in the 10th minute, that terrible pass from Ter Stegen, it's what cost Barcelona. It's what cost Barcelona the game. It was also nice to see Ansu Fati come off the bench and get 5 minutes at the end of the game. It's nice that he's back and healthy, but it's just so disappointing, to be completely honest. There are no ways around it, and it's just, you go into that game with so many positive feelings and so many positive emotions because the way that Hansi Flick has set this team up. And yeah, you've picked up a couple injuries, but Marc-Andre Ter Stegen, he had other plans, and I don't even want to say it's like, I almost want to say congratulations that he lost that game, which I know he didn't mean to, but the performance was almost so bad that it makes me question if he did that on purpose, which I know he didn't, right? But it's like there's no way he would try and make that pass, right? When he had Kubarsi and Inigo Martinez to his right and to his left, and then the saves. It was a great cut inside and finish, and maybe Kubarsi and Inigo Martinez were blocking Ter Stegen's view, but it's a near post finish. And as I said, step 1, opposing player shoots near post. Step 2, step 3. That's exactly what happens in a big Champions League game for Ter Stegen. You get beat too easily on shots, and he freezes too many times. And then in the second goal, like I said, he was trying to predict it, but don't get beat if the shot is right at you. Don't make it easier for the opposing player to score. And he put it exactly where you would want it, and it still bounced and went in. And that's just so frustrating. And also, Embolo as well, their striker, he was offsides, but he scored. And it was not a difficult shot. Every other keeper in the world would have tried to save it, and Ter Stegen did not know that he was offsides. I'll try and see if I can find the picture. I could not believe, I was still frustrated that he let that goal in, even though it didn't count, because his hands were here. The ball was just at his side, and he just almost moved away from it. And then he also made a couple more mistakes in possession. Man, that was so frustrating. And like I said, I'm trying to move away from that fact, but that's the main focal point of this game. And what you can take away from it is Ter Stegen cannot be making a mistake like that if you want to go far in the Champions League. Like I said, in the positive, hopefully this is the first and only time they do that this season. But I just can't believe the last game in the Champions League was that game against PSG. Ron Araujo, terrible red card, set his team up for failure in the first half of the game. Within 10 minutes of coming back in the Champions League, Ter Stegen does the exact same thing. And maybe some people will blame Eric Garcia a little bit. I just think it was reactionary from him. He was just trying to stop it, and Minamino, he just went down with easy contact. But, I mean, I don't blame him. And at first the referee gave a yellow card. I said that's got to be a red card, unfortunately, and it was. So there were no doubts about that. And it seemed like Monaco also got a penalty at the end. The referee was just terrible to call that, and luckily he went to VAR and overturned it because that was not a penalty at all. But it's just, I've said frustrating so many times in this video, but it is so frustrating that Ter Stegen has completely cost this team. Individually, that's one of the worst performances I've seen in a very long time in the Champions League. And I don't want him to feel bad. I don't want people to go bash him on social media. But as a Barcelona fan, I just want to talk about how I feel about this game. And I've said for years that the couple of times that the first few videos that I made when I had a platform talking about Barcelona, I like to share my thoughts, and I just think that Ter Stegen in big Champions League games, it just seems like he just doesn't step up and bail you out. He actually makes it easier for the other team at times. And I don't know, maybe I could be reactionary about that, but I've thought that for a long time. So people will say I'm reactionary, but I'm actually sticking to what I believe is true, which is that Barcelona could definitely look to upgrade that position. It's been too long, and it just has not worked in the Champions League. You've got to be thinking, what can we do differently? But as I said, I don't want to just grill one player. You know, you win as a team, you lose as a team. But Barcelona, of course, the reason that they went out and lost this game was because of a terrible individual mistake within 10 minutes. So I can't really blame Hansi Flick. I can't blame the other players that were on the field because they tried their absolute hardest to get a result in this game, and they were very close. But when you're playing 10v11 for 80 minutes, it makes it really difficult to get a result. So I can't bash the other players that were on the field. I think they tried their hardest. Rafinha was wasteful. Lewandowski didn't make an impact. But I think Pedri and Casado together in the midfield were very good. Lamine Yamal, what a goal, in his first Champions League goal, which is very nice to see. There are still some very special players on this team, but it's frustrating when you know you could have won that game easily without an individual mistake within 10 minutes of the start of the game. And in my last video, I talked about some of the starting lineups that I thought Hansi Flick was going to put out, and he went with the more defensive one. He went with Eric Garcia and then Pedri as a 10 instead of something like Pedri and Casado in a double pivot, and then Ferran Torres or Pau Victor on the left, which that's what I think Hansi Flick has done typically. He's played with 4 attackers, but he played with 3 today. He added another defensive midfielder, and it was going to be Eric Garcia and Casado with Pedri as the 10, which some Barca fans like him there. I prefer him more in a pivot, but it just wasn't to be in the first 10 minutes. I think they did struggle a little bit to build out, but of course within the first 10 minutes of an away tie in the Champions League, you're not expecting complete domination there. We just didn't get to see how that team performed. Like I said, on a personal level, you don't want to go at one player and say, oh, this is all your fault. Because like I said, you win as a team, you lose as a team. But there are definitely some things that you have to look to improve. But as I said, very impressed with Marc Casado. I really hope he's not injured. And he did very well. I'm very impressed with him. And some Barca fans maybe say, physically he's not at that level, but I think he held his own in a very difficult away game in the Champions League. He was great on possession. I mean, he did have the assist to Lamine Yamal to equalize in the first half. And defensively, he was putting in such a great shift. He must have been the most tired player on the field. Pedri as well was trying his absolute hardest to get a result, but it wasn't to be. In Barcelona, they absolutely have to try and bounce back as quickly as possible in the Champions League, because with this new format, I don't exactly know how it works, but it's not good to get off to a losing start. But Barcelona, they now have 7 games in the group stage remaining, so there's a little bit more of a margin of error just in terms of games that they have. So they have more opportunities to show themselves in the Champions League, but that cannot happen again. You cannot, like I said, if it's going to happen in the Champions League, I'm glad it happened in the first game. Get it done and over with, but it shouldn't be happening in the first place. But get it done and over with, and never let that happen again. At this point, if there's even a 50% chance of getting a red card, if you're a Barcelona player, Hansi Flick, can you please just tell everyone, don't make the challenge. Don't even touch them, because the majority of the time, especially if it's the first half, if it's, 80th, 90th minute, yeah, go ahead and make that challenge. If it's the first 10 minutes of a game, do not get sent off. That should be priority number 1, because If it was 11v11, I think Barcelona would have ended this game with 3 points, or at least with a draw, and we would have been able to see a true game. Because from a supporter perspective, just watching this game, you don't want to see 10v11. You want to see 11v11 and see which team is better. That's what it's supposed to be. But the referee had no choice. It was a deserved red card. But just do not get sent off in the first half. It just can't happen again. I'm just so shocked that it happened again. I couldn't believe it, but that's what happened. And Barcelona, their reaction on the field, I think it was good, though. They tried their absolute hardest. And this game, Monaco, away from home, it was never going to be an easy game. So I'm impressed with the players that were on the field. They tried their absolute hardest, and I'm proud of those players. So I understand a lot of Barca fans being upset about this because the momentum that they had going into this game, and then within the first 10 minutes, it changes like that. That's frustrating, right? But I really liked the performance and the attitude from the other players that were on the pitch that were working twice as hard just to try and get a result in this game. So very proud of them. And there are still some positives to take away from this game. And as I said, I really don't think it'll help if I know some, unfortunately, just the way that football fans are, they're going to go on Ter Stegen's page and say, get out of the club, oh, you're terrible, whatever. I don't think that's really going to help him. I try and talk to other Barca fans because I know, one, Ter Stegen's not going to see this, and I'm trying not to be personal to him at all. But it's a position that maybe Barcelona can look to improve upon in the next coming years, which is what I've said for a couple years now. But I try and say it positively at least, because I saw the Tottenham player, I think his name was Brennan Johnson, he basically had to delete his Instagram because of all the abuse he was receiving from his own fans. You don't want to see that, and I don't think it's productive. It doesn't help the player at all. And the energy around the club, you want to be supportive in times where players can, it's all right, right? Ter Stegen can make a mistake. That's part of the game, and I think in a goalkeeper position, that's a position that almost over anyone else you can never make a mistake in. So it's frustrating, of course, but like I said, there are positives to take away from this. And Barcelona, they still have a load of games in the Champions League to get back to winning ways. And it's on to the next at this point, because there's nothing you can do to change the result or the performance. It's just on to the next. And Barcelona, they have a big game in La Liga this weekend. You want to continue to get back to winning ways and to play the way that Barcelona know that we can play now because of the way that Hansi Flick has set this team up and gotten them to play. So, Lamine Yamal, of course, special shout out to him. What a goal that he had, and what a performance again from Casado, Lamine, Kubarsi, Pedri. But yeah, wasn't to be today, and Barcelona, unfortunately, they did start with a loss to Monaco, but I still think there are so many positives in this team, and I'm so excited for the rest of the season. But as always, thank you very much for watching my video. VISCA BARCA. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Thank you. Peace.